You know, I never cared much for snakes until I found this one. Let me tell you a little about it. Looks like a good spot for a snake, doesn't it? But this is the Mann's 10-inch floating snake. Now, Bob and I have used the jelly worm from the Mann's bait company for over 40 years. But it wasn't until I went to their website that I found the floating snake, and when I found them, I immediately ordered some. Pulled some like this. I've tried 2 different types so far. They both worked equally well. What's different about the floating snake versus a ribbon tail worm? Yeah, they basically have the same action when they're going through the water. The key is this floats. So when you're fishing a plastic worm, you're throwing it out, you want to keep it up to the surface, you're throwing it and you're having to bring it back in a hurry. Here, you just throw this out and let it sit. It's almost like fishing a plastic frog instead of fishing a plastic worm. You can let her sit, take your time, start it out, and bring it back at a nice slow retrieve and keep it right across the top of the water. Now, one thing I want to show you, get in a little closer if I can, is how you hook up the snake. The important part to the snake is you want to keep that nose up in the air when he's coming back. You don't want it to dig in and let the water start coming across the top. So here's what I'm using. This is, I believe this is a 4/0 worm hook with a spring. So I'm putting a spring in. Now normally if you're fishing a plastic worm, you're putting that spring right on the end of the nose and putting it in. But in the case of the snake, I actually come up underneath the nose. I put mine in down here, screw it in underneath the nose. Then when you hook it in, that will have that nose tipped up and will tend to make sure it rides on top of the water instead of digging in. There's other combinations, other hook combinations you can use. This is the one I started with and kind of one I prefer. Again, nice thing, it's a 4/0 hook. I don't care if you got a 3/0, 4/0 hook, it'll float even with that heavy of a hook on it. So the Mann's 10-inch snake, it'll give you a topwater action just like a plastic frog, and it'll give you hits like a plastic frog. This isn't going to be like fishing a plastic worm where you get those kind of slow, maybe a little weight and little tip. When they hit one of these, they're going to hit one of these just like they hit a frog. So if you love topwater action, and I really do, the Mann's 10-inch floating snake I think is a great route to go. I'd recommend them. I'll put a link down to them in the description so you can find them. Maybe give them a try for yourself. Thanks for sticking with me.